Oh, wait. This is the worst part about this because I want to get an intro for YouTube so I can just run it. Let's just go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm MCK. You guys might know me as the man who put in Roger's ear that Robert Saleh should be gone if Robert Saleh and Aaron have that sort of relationship. And welcome to week 5 of the NFL Power Rankings, where I, of course, will go through some of the best of the teams week to week in the NFL. So we'll get started with that. Before, of course, I go through my power rankings itself, I can get to the bottom 3. So the worst of the worst. The worst 3 teams in the NFL, because where there's positives to shine for every team, it's also negatives for 3 of these NFL football teams. First up, the New England Patriots. They are the worst team in the NFL, in my opinion. This week's game, they played against Miami Dolphins. Truly one of the worst games that I had ever seen. Their Patriots are so bad that they finally have given in and given up on Jacoby Brissett. They take him out back while they shine out the number 3 overall pick, Drake May, who will get his debut actual start next week. And when you have to start your rookie quarterback, you know that what you had at first was a disaster. Besides by 1 win against Cincinnati, the Patriots have since been pretty much a laughingstock. They had to bench one of their star running backs because of fumbling, and he was still better than the guy that was supposed to be the preferred starter for that week. So that's the dysfunction of the Patriots. They are the worst of the NFL at this moment. Just in front of them, though, is the team that they lost to in the Miami Dolphins. Who knew that losing your star quarterback would have such an effect where your team is genuinely awful? Huntley is certainly not a quarterback fix that you could rely on. The Dolphins' defense is surely missing Christian Wilkins, especially as the Raiders will start missing Christian Wilkins as he is out with an injury. Also, you've got playmakers like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Achane. Soon enough, Mostert's going to come back to the roster, or he did during this last game. This team is not producing anything resembling an offense at all. And it's sad to see how the mighty might have fallen. From a team last year scoring 73 points on opponents to barely getting 10 or getting 15 against the New England Patriots this week prior. This is the number 2 worst team in the NFL by far. Miami Dolphins really need Tua back. Let's hope that he comes back in flying colors and doesn't get hurt again. Needs to protect his head. The best of the worst teams are the Carolina Panthers. I sung the Carolina Panthers' praises earlier in the year when they beat the Raiders down so cleanly after Andy Dalton made his first start. But since then, the Carolina Panthers have slid right back down to the irrelevancy train. I mean, Dalton can only do so much, but he also can't do much enough with this overall offense and team that needs to be reworked once again. The only thing I can sing praises for Carolina is that I think their offensive line is one of the best ones, and they certainly can run the ball very well. Chuba Hubbard has been a bright spot in an otherwise pretty abysmal overall team. They get blown out this week by the Chicago Bears, which should tell you something as well. Carolina just needs to go back to their drawing board, keep at it with Andy Dalton, but this team's still not good, and just needs is in the consideration, bottom 3 for Carolina. All right, we now get to head to the top 10, finally. Okay, these are my top 10 teams in the NFL right now. Before, of course, I got to mention honorably the Chicago Bears. The Bears are starting to finally find their groove. Caleb Williams is are acclimating to the NFL speed finally, and it shows that this team has a pretty decent defense and their offense finally flowing well. Great running, great defense, a classic Chicago Bear-esque team, but also Caleb Williams has been slinging the rock pretty well. Had 300 yards, of course, this week against Carolina, and is throwing it to DJ Moore a lot more often, probably one of his more favorite targets. See what I did there? I didn't try to do that, but I did. And the running game is stout for Chicago. Swift has finally kicked it into a different gear. And with the Bears winning their last 2 games in a row, they now sit to make some noise right now when everyone thought that was what they were going to do this year once they got Williams. It's been a slow process, but good job on the Bears. They might make the top 10 if they can win this week. At number 10, and I hate to do this as a Raider fan, it's got to be the Denver Broncos. The Broncos have won their last 3 games in a row. And Bo Nix might actually not be a bad quarterback. Or at least he is doing a great job at learning Sean Payton's system. You know, maybe he was the correct call to start at quarterback. Maybe the Broncos defense is actually really good. And if they can continue their win streak, they could be a dark horse, which have been like their moniker for a few years now. Like, hey, look out for the Broncos. They're the dark horse, dark horse, dark horse. Now they're kind of looking like that. Because their defense is great. Patrick Surtain is the best corner, like one of, if not the best corners in the NFL right now. Had a 100-yard pick 6 against the Raiders. Stopped Garner Minshew mania, the lab summer, if I've been saying on my Twitch. And, yeah, they're pretty good. I hate to do this. They could go even higher if they continue to win like they have been. Number 10, Denver. Next up at number 9 is the Seattle Seahawks, who had an embarrassing loss against the New York Giants, so they fall to 9. This team, when I saw against Detroit, I thought, okay, they have a lot of great offense. They certainly can beat the Giants, right? They did not. So why do they remain on the list? Well, because I think Geno Smith is still a really good quarterback. Jackson Smith-Njigba has been a great shining spot for the receiving corps. He's definitely their number 2 top target. And then Walker coming back has been a huge help for them. But man, this defense of Seattle is just not that good. When I thought the defense was actually getting better early in the season, it really hasn't. It's just gotten worse and worse overall. They can't really stop too much. The defensive line has not been able to produce the sacks that Seattle needed or wanted for them. And if they lose once again, they are at risk of losing the top 10 entirely. That offense cannot save Seattle and their defensive woes for too much longer. Number 8 is the Buffalo Bills, who also had an embarrassing loss to their resume. They've had 2 losses in a row, and they fall from what once was what I thought was the number 1 team in the country, in the nation, has now gone all the way down to number 8 in my top 10 power rankings. The Billies need a number 1 wide receiver pretty damn badly. They're definitely missing Stephon Diggs and their receiving core. You can't make Josh Allen do everything. Cook had a nice game this past week, but it didn't really help when the defense is also kind of struggling here and there in just random spurts. I truly think that a number 1 wide receiver would be someone that could make this Bills team better. But with their skid that they're on right now, they skid also in the top 10. They go down to number 8. They got to get better, man. In front of them is the Atlanta Falcons. You know, once One fantastic fun win is a rarity, but have it multiple times in a year, you got to get onto my top 10. This is the first time we've seen the Atlanta Falcons in the top 10. Kirk Cousins is showing why he's $100 million richer. He continues to get these big contracts, and now he's reducing the wins that that the Falcons paid him for. Even if they kind of alienated him with a quarterback drafted at number 8, which the Raiders certainly could have used, the Falcons still have a great team. They got an overtime victory, 36-30 this past week. That was the Thursday night game. That was so fun to watch. And their defense can clamp it up a little bit, and they continue winning like this. The Falcons might be the actual favorites for their division. I know it's not the best division to really hammer home on, but they certainly are controlling that narrative at this moment. Good job, Kirk Cousins. Drake London has been one of my more favorite receivers, and Bijan Robinson might not be the most utilized for fantasy owners, but he's another leg in what is a pretty high-flying, no pun intended, Falcons offense. Number 6, it's Detroit. The Lions had not played this week. So I think they do slide a little bit from last week's power rankings, but they remain in that sort of middle of the pack positioning. They're 3-1 still. They get a nice and healthy bye week, even though they watched the rest of their division win, which is not fun for them to see, but I'm not worried too much when Jared Goff is playing some great football. They have a two-headed monster at running back in Gibbs and Montgomery. Their defense is very solid with Aiden Hutchinson at the end doing monstrously good things. And Brian Branch is one of my favorite safeties in the NFL right now. Detroit, they come back this week and hopefully can get a win. 4-1, they'll pop up this list pretty high up if they can continue their offensive juggernaut state that they've been in the past few weeks. At number 5, speaking of offensive juggernauts, it's the Baltimore Ravens, who came off a very impressive win over the Bills and then had an even more impressive win against the Bengals, where the Bengals kept fighting them back and forth. Lamar Jackson continues to show why he's a 2-time MVP. He's getting better. These Ravens finally have established their running attack, and it's a dangerous running attack. Henry, once again, King Henry reigns. People thought that they could take him away from the throne, and he brutally grabs it back like a stiff arm that he so patently runs through. These Baltimore Ravens, if I can give one actual critique for them, is that their defense does need to step up a little bit more. Usually you tout the Ravens for their defenses in a John Harbaugh-led team, but no, it just hasn't been that dominant per se. I mean, they definitely shook Burrow to help win that game, but it was an offensive shootout. If you want to be a team that goes into offensive shootouts, you want to be the Ravens because they're one of the best at it. They're at number 5 for this list. At number 4, and ahead of them, bit of a controversy, Ravens are very good, but Washington's been electric. They've been one of my favorite teams to watch. Jaden Daniels is literally running away with Rookie of the Year right now, and possibly the best rookie quarterback on there right now in terms of athleticism and talent oozing around. Nobody expect this Washington team to be 4-1 and a number 1 in the NFC, did they? But yeah, here they are at the top of the mountain. Washington fans got to be very very hype on the fact that once Dan Snyder leaves, Washington immediately gets a RG3 2.0, but hopefully this RG3 is super healthy all the time and that RG3 makes his own stake and name, and it's Jaden Daniels. I also love, and as a side, that McLaurin finally has a quarterback who can throw it to him, because he will, and he's thrown a lot of great darts. Washington, look out for them. I don't know if they're Super Bowl bound yet, but with the NFC East being as lackluster as the rest of the division is, look for Washington to swoop up and do very good things. This team's exciting. Into the top three. Number 3 is the Houston Texans, who beat the number 8, of course, team on this list, the Buffalo Bills. I think it was a 23-20 victory, even as the Bills came back slightly into that game. CJ Stroud shows his stuff with a win against Buffalo. When you beat a top 10 team, you get hoisted up into the top 10. Number 3 might seem a little bit high for this Houston team, but at 4-1 in the games that they've played, you gotta hand it to Houston. They are still pretty damn good. CJ Stroud's still pretty good. Even in a sophomore slump, this team is winning. And they're winning pretty, I don't want to say winning convincingly, but even in hardship, they can come back and do their job well. CJ Stroud has been loving Diggs so far this season. I think it's one of his favorite targets. Did lose Nico Collins in that game, but with the star power of Tank Dell ready and into the mix, I think Houston will be fine. Show up the defense a little bit, and they might become the number 1 team. But, of course, that one loss puts them down. Because at number 2, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Chiefs should probably be at number 1 for most lists. But when I look and I see who the Chiefs have beaten and not looked good doing it, I got to put them at number 2. They're 5-0, right? They had their most impressive game just this last week against the Saints and still saw Mahomes throw a pick. Now, granted, it was a very funny pick and one of my more entertaining interceptions of the year. But frankly, the Chiefs still really need to beat a fantastic team to really prove it to me that they can do it. Now, I know they won week 1 against the Ravens, but the Ravens hadn't really found their footing yet, quite literally, because they started running the ball a lot better. And then they beat the Bengals, who can't really do anything well on defense, and they're very close to becoming the bottom 3 of those Bengals. Kansas City, they have a shot this week to prove to everyone that they are a fantastic team. If they can win next week, they can actually be into high consideration for the number 1 spot. Patrick Mahomes is still really good, and even without Rashee Rice, the Chiefs find a way, because Juju Smith-Schuster had 130 receiving yards, and their defense was damn solid against the New Orleans Saints. Saints couldn't do anything. Even Alvin Kamara could not run that ball well, pretty much that night. So the Chiefs are still a damn good team. They're number 2 for a reason, but I haven't seen enough to put them at the number 1 spot. Because who I have seen do very well is your de facto number 1 team for the 3rd power ranking in a row. It's Minnesota. The Vikings are the best team in the NFL right now. Even when Sam Darnold has his worst statistical game of the season, Vikings still win an overall blowout victory. Even as Aaron Jones gets hurt and Chandler, I don't think it was a blowout. But either way, withstanding, Vikings still win. Even with their offensive woes, they are still winning. They've beaten the better teams. That's why they're ahead of the Chiefs right now. They're 1 of 2 of these unbeaten 5-0 teams, and they surely deserve it. I think the Vikings defense is still top-notch this season. Not sure exactly what happened, what they put into the cereal of Minnesota, but it's been damn good for them. Sam Darnold might have been seeing a little bit of some ghosts, but he did perform when he needed to. And I don't know if he's just the best schemed quarterback in the world or what, But Minnesota is still winning. They're 5-0. Until they get that first loss, they might still remain as the number one team. They've beaten some of the best this season and have made themselves into the best of the teams, man. I love it. And I hope you love it too, because that is my top 10 power rankings. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked the power rankings and what teams were there, you should give the video a like. If you didn't like this power rankings list, should still give it a like and then write down in the comments why you didn't like it. Did I not put your team in the top 10? Does your team deserve the bottom 3? There's a bunch of them that could have been in that list as well. Let me know. I've been MCK, and I'll see y'all in a week. Okay, we can just